Hey everybody, it's nutritionist Amy Berger from To It Nutrition, back again for another installment of doing keto without the crazy. Today's topic is a very interesting one, and it's one that comes up a lot, and I'm actually doing this topic as a viewer request. So yes, if you have topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send me an email at toitnutrition@gmail.com. I do take requests. I'm kind of like a lounge piano player. I take requests. I can't promise that I will always fulfill your request. If it's a topic I'm just not educated on enough to speak about it, then I won't. But if it's something that I do think I can lend a voice of reason to and say something intelligent about, I'm happy to take requests. This request came from somebody, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I hope you're watching. Somebody that I met at the Adapt Your Life event that we had in Lawrenceville, Georgia, just a few weeks ago. And what is the topic? How to deal with uncooperative doctors, with doctors that are not on board with low carb or keto, doctors that may actively try to talk you out of it. How do we deal with medical professionals that don't support what we want to do? Lots of notes as always. I didn't look at them too much before, so I'll probably be looking down a lot. And it's an important topic. I don't want to mess it up, but I think I say that all the time. So we have a lot to get through, but just to let you know where we're headed, we're going to talk a lot about how to interact with doctors, how to have a good relationship with your doctor. But at the end of the video, I will talk about how to find a doctor that is keto friendly. They do exist, just like nutritionists who are keto and low carb friendly. We do exist. Certainly, we're still the minority of the profession, but you can find us. So I'll mention a few things at the end, and I will also have some links that you'll want to check out in the notes for this video. I will have links to websites where you can search for keto-friendly, either medical professionals, dietitians, nutritionists, health coaches, and there will be links to sites that are specific to the US, to Canada, to the UK and Ireland, Australia and New Zealand, and I think that's it. If you are watching this in another country where you happen to know of some keto-friendly doctors or other healthcare professionals, write into some of those sites that will be listed and try to get those people listed. I know of a couple of, keto-friendly doctors in Chile and Argentina, but you might be in China, you might be in India, and you might know some medical professionals that if we could get their information to other people also in your country, it might really help them. So on with the show. Big disclaimer, probably more important than ever on my videos. We all know I'm not a doctor, so none of this is medical advice. I don't cure, diagnose, treat, or prevent any medical condition. Everything I'm going to say is my opinion. None of it is medical advice. So just so we're clear on that. I'm probably going to say some unpopular things. And it's just the way it is. Just the way it is in the state of the medical profession and the nutrition and dietetics profession right now, that, low carb and keto are not the mainstream. It's not really accepted as mainstream, and that kind of upsets me, and it might show in various ways in this video. With that in mind, before I do say anything bad, please know that I have the utmost respect for doctors. I'm too lazy to go to medical school, plus I'm 40 years old. I know it's never too late, but if I had any discipline and any work ethic whatsoever, I would have gone to medical school 10 years ago. Instead of getting a degree in nutrition, I would have gone to medical school. So I absolutely have the utmost respect for doctors and nurses and PAs and everybody in the medical profession. But, I think there's no stupid doctors, right? You have to be pretty intelligent to get through medical school, or maybe like hard work can make up for slightly less intelligence, but in general you've got to be a pretty high level of smart just to get into medical school and to graduate from medical school. And so there's no stupid doctors, there's no unintelligent doctors. They might be incompetent, they might be closed-minded, they might be ignorant about new developments in their field or in their specialty, but it doesn't mean they're stupid. And I also think that all doctors, all nurses, all medical and all healthcare professionals want to help people. They come from a place of sincerely wanting to help. Nobody is going to go through the expense and the stress and the difficulty of medical school or nursing school or anything without genuinely wanting to be in that profession, genuinely wanting to help lives, help improve people's health, their quality of life, all that stuff. So I really like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think there's any doctor or medical professional out there who wants to hurt you or is deliberately keeping helpful information from you. I truly believe that any doctor that isn't telling you about keto or low carb or paleo or any variation of this stuff, they're not trying to hurt you. They either don't know about it, they know about it and they just don't believe it, they don't trust it, or I don't know what the other alternatives are. Maybe they're just not aware enough about it. Maybe they've heard of it, they see some colleagues having success with it, but they don't know enough about it to help you, so they'd rather just not mention it. Again, for whatever reason that they're not telling you about it, they just don't know. And if they're actively talking you out of it, that's a different story. That's where I think maybe they're just not willing to learn. But that's coming in a few minutes. Let's one thing at a time. The word doctor comes from the Latin root docere, D-O-C-E-R-E, which means to teach. It means to teach. It's the same root that we get docent from, like the docent at a museum who teaches you about the museum, who teaches you about the art and the artifacts you see. That's what a doctor is supposed to do. They're supposed to teach. Teach you about your health, teach you about the condition you have, why you have it, why it happened, and what to do about it. If your doctor is not doing that, again, I've mentioned this in previous videos. When I was in the military, we would have called that dereliction of duty. They are not living up to the responsibility they have to you as their patient to teach you how to get better or how to stay well if you're already well. Now, if they don't stay up on the latest research, that's dereliction of duty, because they have, in my opinion anyway, maybe it's not the Hippocratic Oath, maybe it's not literally a contract they signed, but in my opinion, they have a professional obligation to you, to all their patients, to stay up on the latest developments in their field. If they graduated medical school 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, half the stuff they learned may no longer be accurate, and maybe it wasn't even accurate when they learned it, but everybody thought it was. Research happens, paradigms change, things shift, and if they're not keeping up with it, how are they supposed to help you? Look at all the type 2 diabetics we have now, the women with PCOS, the people with cardiovascular disease, with all this stuff that is very easily helped, if not totally reversed, by a low carb or ketogenic diet. And if those professionals don't know, if they haven't read the literature, they're not keeping up with the latest research, they can't tell you about it. They can't tell you if they don't know. And they don't know because they're not going to the conferences, or maybe they're not going to the right conferences. They're not keeping up with the journals. And that's a problem for me, in my opinion. That's not cool. People are coming to them for help. And how can they help people if they're not aware, if maybe there is something new that can help them, whether it's a new type of diet or a new surgical procedure that's more effective or more safe than ones they've been using in the past. Like, it is a professional obligation, a professional, duty to keep up on that. All right, let's see what else. I mean, if you're a doctor and you hear a lot of stories from other doctors, your colleagues and your peers, of great success. Hey, I had this guy come to my office, I put him on keto, he's lost 60 pounds, I reduced his insulin, he's off of his whatever, his glipizide, his Victoza, he's off all these drugs, his blood pressure's down, his triglycerides are down. The other doctor should be curious. If that doctor is telling another doctor about these amazing stories, and it's not just one, it's 2, then it's 5, then it's 10, then it's 20, then it's 50 patients, and we see the same thing over and over again, that these people are getting massively better. Whereas everyone else in the practice or everyone else in the hospital, everyone's declining. Everyone's being put on more and more insulin, more and more medication. They're getting worse and worse. The A1C keeps getting higher. The triglycerides keep getting higher. Shouldn't the doctors that are not having the other kind of success be curious? that doctor should be begging the successful one to tell them what they're doing. Oh my God, your patients are getting so much better. I've never seen anything like this. They come into the office, they have energy, their skin is clear, they've lost weight, they look like a different person. Tell me what you're doing so I can tell all my patients. When that doesn't happen, that's really upsetting. Curiosity should be like a fundamental quality of a doctor, of any scientist, of anyone who considers themselves a scientifically based person. I actually heard that from Gary Taubes in an interview on the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Sean Baker and Zach Bitter. I just listened this afternoon. Gary was like, where's the curiosity? Shouldn't people be more curious about this? Yeah, they should, in my opinion. So, you know, some of the doctors that you probably know through Twitter or Facebook or just in the low carb conferences and the books were curious, and we owe their presence in the low carb community to their curiosity. And I'm sure there's many, many, many. The two that I know of right off the top of my head are Ted Naiman and Eric Westman, and both of them have said in numerous interviews that they found out about low carb through their patients, right? Eric Westman was never overweight, never metabolically ill. Ted Naiman, if you look at his before pictures, he doesn't post them very often, but if you look at before, he was a little pudgy, you know, a little bloated looking, a little sort of inflamed looking, you know, that sort of, you know what that person looks like. And he did not always have the Greek godlike physique that he has now that you see on Twitter. But he wasn't obese, you know, he wasn't diabetic, but he was following what he thought was a good diet. Anyway, the point is these two doctors learned about low carb through patients. And it was patients who came to them who were overweight, who were diabetic, and all of a sudden at a follow-up visit down the line, they came back leaner, thinner, healthier, off of some of their medication already. Blood sugar was better, everything looks better. And Dr. Westman and Dr. Naiman said to these people, what did you do? How did this happen? And you know what they all said? The Atkins diet. And thank goodness we owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Naiman and Dr. Westman for having the curiosity to say, what did you do? And not just to end it there. Oh, you did Atkins? Great. Okay, have a nice day. They both were like, whoa, I better look into this. Let me learn about this. And I know Dr. Westman very well, and he actually looked into it more because he wanted to make sure it was safe. He's like, well, clearly this works. I'd like to learn more about it. You know, I only had like 2 or 3 patients come to me that did this, but it's working. Let me learn more, because if I'm going to tell other patients to do it, I want to make sure it's safe. And I'm sure Dr. Naiman was the same way. I'm sure all the doctors were the same way. And they did it themselves first. You know, they were their own guinea pigs. And other doctors that we know, some of them found low carb, again, not because they learned it in medical school, not because they learned anything about nutrition, but because they themselves were either overweight or obese or diabetic or pre-diabetic or headed in that direction. They were dealing with some health problem that did not get better when they were doing what they thought they were supposed to do and doing what they would tell their own patients, right? Eat less, exercise more, you know, whatever, lots of whole grains, don't eat so much fat, especially red meat fat, you know. And again, the examples right off the top of my head, Dr. Tro Kalayjian, he's opening his own practice in New York City. He's dynamite. He's lost over 150 pounds. So talk about a doctor that walks the walk, talks the talk, knows what he's doing. He's been through it himself. Sean Baker, same way. He lost some weight. You know, he was like a master's level practice. I don't know if Olympic level, but like an elite level athlete in certain sports. Yet he was a little overweight. He was headed towards some very bad metabolic issues. And he had to learn about this for himself. Joy Kitty, she's a registered dietitian in the Vancouver, Canada area. Same thing. She was an overweight dietitian. She has a wonderful blog. I'll post a link to it in the notes. I think it's LCHF I'm not sure. I'm not even going to bother. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But Joy also lost a lot of weight by doing the exact opposite of what she had learned in her dietetics training. But the point is, you know, we have medical and nutrition and dietetics professionals who are friendly to keto, but they weren't always. You know, they didn't start out doing this. They didn't graduate from medical school. They didn't graduate from dietetics programs teaching about keto or doing it themselves. So I want to thank all the doctors out there and dietitians and nutritionists and nurses and all the professionals that do this, however you came into it, whether you came into it from your own weight loss or health thing like I did, or whether you were curious enough and open-minded enough like Dr. Naiman and Dr. Westman to learn. Dr. Westman uses the phrase overtrained. He said, I wasn't so overtrained that I wasn't open to something new. So let's get down to business. How do you talk about keto to a doctor? You've all seen the movie Fight Club, right? The first rule of keto, don't talk about keto. Just don't even do it. Don't bother, save your breath. Don't aggravate yourself. Don't aggravate your doctor. Don't use the K word. You don't have to use the K word. If a doctor asks you what you're doing, like let's say you're at a follow-up visit with this professional and you've lost some weight, your blood sugar's better, your triglycerides are down, your HDL is up, like your pain is less, your skin looks better, everything's great. Hey, Mrs. Johnson, what are you doing? You don't have to say I'm doing keto. You don't even have to say I'm doing low carb. What you could say is, I cut out all the sugar and refined carbs, and I'm eating good quality protein. Period. Done. Nothing about that is inaccurate. You might be omitting certain things, but you're not lying. You didn't say, well, I'm not doing that crazy keto diet. All you said was the truth. I cut out sugar and I cut out a lot of refined carbs. I'm just eating better. You could leave it at that. Most doctors aren't going to care beyond that. They'll be like, wow, that sounds great. It's clearly working for you. Great. See you next time. If there's zero argument, they can't complain about that. Oh, you stopped eating sugar? I think that's bad, Mrs. Johnson. I think you should probably go back to eating sugar. No doctor is going to say that, no matter how anti-keto they are. So that's a safe bet, is to just say you're eating a better diet. If you eat vegetables, you can say, I'm eating high quality proteins, I'm eating a lot of vegetables, I cut out all the starch and the crappy sugar. That's enough to say. No medical professional can argue with that. If you don't eat vegetables, if you're a strict carnivore, like there's a growing movement of those people now, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I'm not eating any vegetables. I would say I've cut out all the sugar and starchy, carby crap, which is absolutely true of a carnivore diet, isn't it? So you can kind of dance around it if you want to. Rule number 2, let your results speak for themselves. Most doctors, sad but true, are not going to ask you anything about your diet. When you take a sick animal to the veterinarian, the first question is, what are you feeding him? What are you feeding her? They almost never ask you that at the doctor's office. Almost never. The people doctors. And so chances are they're never even going to ask you what you're putting in your mouth. But if you come back from one visit to the next and you've lost 20 pounds and your A1C is down a full percentage point or something has markedly improved, hopefully they might say, wow, this, how'd you do that? What's going on? Then you can say, well, I'm eating better. Here's what I'm doing. You still don't have to use the K word. You still don't have to say the phrase low carb. You don't have to say the name Atkins. You don't have to say Banting. You don't have to say the Noakes diet if you're in South Africa. Whatever. You can just say, I started eating a lot better. You don't have to give any details unless they ask you for them. Like I said, if triglycerides are down, HDL is up, you're feeling better, your liver enzymes are better, everything's better, maybe they'll ask you what you're doing. Rule number 3, I know I said don't use the K word, don't say low carb, don't say you're eating more red meat, don't say you're eating more cheese and more butter and more saturated fat. If you want to say that, if you are willing to take the risk of opening the conversation that could be a battle, it could be a fight, it could get antagonistic with your professional, then do it if you're willing to take that risk. Because the fact is, despite me saying, don't talk about keto, don't tell them you're eating more fat, just tell them you're not eating sugar. How are we ever going to change these doctors' minds if we don't say, you know what, I'm doing keto and guess what, I lost 50 pounds and my blood pressure's down and my blood sugar's down and everything's great? How are we going to open their minds to how wonderful and how effective and how powerful keto and low carb or paleo or primal or some version of this way of eating? How are we going to change the paradigm if we don't open this conversation. So some of us are going to start, having to muster up the courage to have these talks with our doctors. Where would we be now if Ted Naiman's patients and if Eric Westman's patients hadn't used the A word, if they hadn't said, I'm doing the Atkins diet, if they had just said, well, I'm eating better, I stopped eating so much sugar and starch, where would we be? Maybe there's plenty of other doctors in the field now, they would have found it, but I would argue that our low carb community, Twitter especially, and North Carolina especially, the low carb universe in general, would be less rich without the presence of those two gentlemen and all the other physicians that we know and love in our community. The point is, it can be really difficult to have that talk, but I would encourage you to do it, because like I said, how are we gonna change any minds if we don't start talking about keto? We can't keep it a secret anymore. We shouldn't have to keep it to ourselves. Our doctors should want to know what we're doing and how it's working and why it's working. If you do have these conversations, what we have to emphasize is that everything has to be done very respectfully. You have to approach it from a point of grace and calm and respect. You might feel very justified in being angry, in being pissed off, in being sarcastic with this person, because let's say that this doctor has treated you for 10, 20, 30 years, and you never ever got any better under his or her care in all those years. You got worse, you needed more medication, you got more tired, you got fatter, everything went downhill until you discovered low carb or keto for yourself. You heard it from a friend, you found it on the internet, you found it somewhere, and you did it yourself, you took it upon yourself to do it, and all of a sudden, everything's getting better. No thanks to this doctor who's been caring for you for so many years. You would have every right to be pissed the hell off, and I wouldn't blame you. I saw this happen to my mother, who is no longer with us. May she rest in peace. She was a very poorly managed type 2 diabetic. And, I'm her kid, so what do I know? I'm talking crazy. I'm telling her to eat butter and eat red meat and maybe not so much on the crackers and the bread. So I was not able to help her, sadly. I don't want to badmouth her doctors, but there's a reason she got worse and worse and worse and worse and died at the age of 65. And it's not because she was eating a low carb diet, because she wasn't, because no one ever recommended it to her except her crazy kid. Have you ever heard Dr. Ken Berry talk about powdered butt syndrome? I want to take credit so badly for that phrase. The credit is all his. Powdered butt syndrome is where if someone has powdered your naked little tushy when you were a baby, they are never going to take you seriously. So you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a nutritionist, you could have written a book about Alzheimer's disease, and guess what? You're still the tiny baby whose butt they powdered, and whatever you have to say, you can't possibly know anything about anything because you are like a 4-month-old. So I think I had that. My mom maybe thought I was nuts. But the point is, I met some of her doctors. They were nice people. They just didn't know how to make type 2 diabetes any better at all. So, righteous indignation, yes, but if we're going to change the paradigm, if we're going to change the minds, it's not going to come from anger, it's not going to come from hatred, it's not going to come from vitriol or trying to get revenge, it's going to come from having a calm, diplomatic, respectful, rational, scientifically sound discussion. So let's see. Moving on. Okay. Now, shifting gears a little bit. It's okay to fire a doctor. It is okay to find a new doctor. Doctors are employed by you. Now, granted, their salary might be paid by some medical system or some insurance company or something, but they are your employee. They work for you. They provide you a service, the service of your medical care, of helping you navigate your body, your medical problems. That is a service they provide to you. If you are not happy with the service they provide, Find a new service provider. Fire them and leave. It's just like going to a restaurant. If you don't like the service at the restaurant or you don't like the food they provide, don't go there anymore. Go to a new restaurant. There's a million restaurants in your town. Even if you live in a small town, there's probably more than one restaurant. Go to the other one. If you don't like, it's okay to find a new doctor. There needs to be zero loyalty. If you have someone you like, that's a different story. If you like them, you're not going to fire them. You owe a doctor nothing. You owe them nothing, especially if you've never ever gotten any better under their guidance. Go fire them. Go somewhere else. Depending on where you live, you might have to drive several hours to find a keto-friendly doctor. I've done this. I've driven 3 hours to see the specific doctor I wanted to see, and it was worth every penny on gas, worth every minute in the car. There's a lot more keto-friendly medical professionals popping up now all over the country and all over the world. So we're not that limited. Most of you watching probably have a vacation fund, or you put funds aside to take even a weekend somewhere at a B&B, have a nice little weekend holiday. If you're dealing with a medical issue and your doctor is not friendly to what you want to do with low carb or keto, maybe put some of that money toward driving half a day or making an overnight trip to somewhere where there is a doctor that you can work with. I know some of the low carb doctors even have people fly in from not even just from other parts of the country, from overseas. They'll make the expense of buying a plane ticket and getting a hotel room for a night just to see a certain doctor. Now, I understand we don't all have the means to do that. That might not be financially feasible for you. Cool. But getting in the car probably and driving for half a day might be just the cost of a tank of gas. Possibly a hotel room. There's so many friendly, warm, caring, genuinely kind human beings in the low carb and keto world. That so many Facebook groups, so many Reddit groups, so many Twitter, people that you might not even have to pay for a hotel. You could probably say, hey, I'm visiting Dr. So-and-so in this town. I live 8 hours away. Can I crash with anyone? Can I sleep on somebody's couch? You're taking your safety into your own hands doing that, but we do that all the time with Airbnb now, right? It would just be free, unless maybe they want to charge you $5, whatever they want to charge you. The point is, I know this community. I've been in the low carb world for a long time, and I'm pretty sure that you'd be able to find somebody that would put you up for free and be happy to do it. If it means you being able to see a doctor that will be keto friendly and will be able to help you, I think most of us would be happy to do it, myself included. So if you can't travel, if travel is not feasible for you either financially or physically, if you are disabled in some way and you can't travel, good news! There's more and more keto-friendly doctors doing online consultations. So either like online by Skype or by phone or some other remote, way of being in communication with you. This is fantastic. Now, it might be a little bit limited because I think the laws may vary from state to state. So it might depend on where you live. It might depend on where they're practicing out of. But, I know there's some doctors that will call it like a teleconference, and it's a health coaching session. It's not a medical appointment, so you do not have a doctor-patient relationship with them. It's more like a health coach. They can advise you, give you some tips, some pointers. We want to make sure everyone's practicing legally and within their scope of practice, but we want you to be able to get help. So there are more and more doctors doing that. So you might not even have to leave your local area if you can't. That's not going to help you in every way. Like if that person can't order blood work for you or can't physically examine you, that is, there's limitations to it, but that's something. It's better than nothing if you want to consult with a keto-friendly medical professional or a nutritionist. I live in North Carolina, but 99.9% of my clients are over the phone or Skype. They're not in my local area. So if anyone is in my local area, I love to meet people in person. I prefer that, but that's totally unsustainable economically in the current way we do nutrition. So If you're looking for a keto-friendly nutritionist, to nutrition.com, there's a work with me tab. You can see about working with me remotely. Let's see. So besides asking about lodging, like, hey, can I crash with you while I see Dr. So-and-so? If you don't know of any keto-friendly doctor in your area, ask. There's only 800 bazillion keto and low-carb Facebook groups and Reddit forums and people on Twitter and all of that, where you can say, I live in blah-de-blah town and blah-de-blah state. Does anyone know of anyone nearby? It's almost guaranteed at this point that somebody will know of someone. Especially if you live in a big city, but you'd be surprised. There's a lot of doctors practicing in small towns that do this. And the thing is, a lot of them might be doing it, but they're not advertising it. They might be very friendly to keto, very open to it, but they're not saying so for whatever reason. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset their colleagues. They don't want to jeopardize their position. But if you go to the office and they close the door, guess what? It's all keto all the time. So, just ask around. Let's see, looking at the notes here. Okay. Little unpopular thing to say here, but hear me out. Well, no, let's see. I spoke too soon. Whether or not you are able to see a keto doctor, it is incumbent upon you to understand your condition, understand your body, understand whatever problem you might have. Get educated. Your doctor is your partner. Your doctor can't make you better. They can give you information. They can give you advice that you then have to implement to make yourself better. There's a quote. I don't know who it's by. I think it's by Thomas Jefferson, but don't quote me on that because I could be dead wrong about that. But the quote goes something like, "The doctor's job is in distracting the patient while nature does the healing." The doctor does not heal you. You heal yourself with hopefully useful, accurate, helpful guidance and information from the doctor. But get educated. And so the part where I said it was going to be controversial is Dr. Google is not always a bad thing. There's that meme out there that doctors say, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. Well, pardon me, please don't confuse your medical degree with the fact that you don't know F all about my condition. The fact that I've been coming to you for 20 years and I'm not any better than I was 2 decades ago. Please do not confuse your medical degree with being able to help me one friggin' iota. So again, there's awesome doctors out there, and there's really doctors out there too, right? Just like any other profession, like nutritionists, like teachers, like whatever, like soldiers, like, I don't know, lawyers, like any profession. There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's dumb ones, there's ignorant ones. It's the way it is. So you can find information on Dr. Google, right? Probably many of you watching found keto through the internet. You didn't get it from your doctor. You didn't get it from your dietitian. You didn't get it from your nurse. You got it from Google. You got it from Facebook. You got it from Reddit. You got it from Twitter. Now, I'm not saying to make that your sole source of information, because there's a lot of dumb, stupid, dangerous, harmful, incorrect crap on the internet too. So it can be very difficult to determine what's accurate, what's not, what's safe, what's stupid. Dr. Google is a minefield. You have to tread very lightly, but just because there's some terrible garbage out there doesn't mean there aren't some really good and helpful pearls. Try to find what makes sense. Learn, about your condition. Learn about the anatomy and physiology and biochemistry of what's going on in whatever organ or tissue you are having an issue with, or whatever process is going on. Learn everything you can, and then learn more. Never stop learning. Okay, so that was my little piece for whether or not you're working with a keto-friendly doctor. You're in charge of your own body. Nobody cares about your health and your well-being, your energy levels, than you do. Not even your doctor. Okay, let's end by me saying, that I will, just repeating that in the notes for this video, I will have links to several sites where you can search for keto-friendly doctors. If you are already working with a keto or low-carb friendly doctor or nurse or nutritionist that you don't see on those websites, tell that doctor or professional, hey, you need to submit to get listed on such and such site. People need to know you're here. They need to know you exist. So that's it. There, like I said, there'll be sites not only for the United States, but for Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and Ireland, some other countries. And that's it. I hope you can find someone on one of those sites if you need to. Worst case scenario, last ditch effort, you can email me, toitnutrition@gmail.com, and tell me I live in blah, blah, blah. Do you know of anyone practicing anywhere near here? Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but it never hurts to ask. That's it. Thank you for watching as always. Thank you for subscribing. If you find these videos helpful, please subscribe. Share these links far and wide if you care to. Guess what? I started a Patreon account. So now you are more than welcome to check me out on Patreon. You can support me with a monthly contribution that way. It's patreon.com/toitnutrition, TUIT nutrition. Or just like before, you can still send a contribution, like a one-time contribution if you want, by PayPal. That's paypal.com, and you can send it to my email address, toitnutrition@gmail.com. And let's see, what else? Before I end, I just want to say thank you again to the medical and nutrition professionals out there that are friendly to keto and are friendly to low carb and paleo and primal, or the specific carbohydrate diet, the GAPS diet, the carnivore diet, whatever iteration of lowish carb, ancestral, just not the standard Western diet, whoever's open to that, or if you're brand new and you're just learning about it because you're kind of curious, you've been watching all these success stories, not just the anecdotes, but from your physician and nurse and dietitian colleagues and peers. Thank you. Thank you for being curious. Thank you for being open-minded. Thank you for wanting to help. Thank you for wanting to get out of a paradigm and a status quo that has done nobody any good whatsoever, except maybe for things like chronic disease and, you know, things like smallpox and malaria and whatever, pneumonia. Like, we're very good at treating that kind of stuff. Very good at infectious disease. Very, very excellent at trauma, you know, broken bones, you know, traumatic injuries. We're awesome at that. We're not so good at this metabolic illness, insulin, dysregulation, cardiovascular, inflammatory stuff. So if you're on board, if you're coming on board, if you're curious about starting to come on board, thank you for being here. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.